The opinions expressed on this program represent the viewpoints of individual authors or contributors and do not necessarily reflect those of Troy University. This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're very fortunate tonight to have as our guest one of my favorite young people in state politics, Miss Caroleene Dobson. Caroleene, for those of y'all who probably know her very well in this part of the state, in the southern part of the state, ran a brilliant campaign for Congress last year, and she's running for Secretary of State of Alabama this time, and she's probably the favorite in that race because she's probably a prolific campaigner, beautiful young lady, outstanding individual. I say this in my column, she exudes integrity. She's the best of Alabama. Although she grew up in Monroe County and grew up on a cattle ranch all of her life in Monroe County, she was so smart coming out of Beatrice, Alabama. She went to Harvard. I mean, you don't have many Alabamians go to Harvard, but she went to Harvard.
I was smarter to come back.
Yeah, I came back, that's right. Then she went to Baylor Law School. She's a lawyer here in Alabama, and a wonderful mother, wife, husband Bobby, and two little girls. But I'll let Caroleene do all the talking. I'm glad to have you on the show, Caroleene.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure to be on with you. And I'm so excited to have this opportunity to hopefully get to serve our state. Running for Congress last year only deepened my appreciation of the wonderful people that we have here, the incredible resources that God has given us, and I want to do what I can to try to make this state better. And I think that the avenue of Secretary of State is one perfectly aligned with my experience and also with my talents. I've spent my entire career as a dirt lawyer, if you will, not in the courtroom, but helping small businesses, advising them in real estate matters and corporate formation. And then, of course, last year as a candidate in a highly contested general election, I've never had a greater appreciation of what it means to have election integrity. And fortunately in this state, we don't have widespread presidential level election fraud like you see in some states and like we certainly saw in 2020. But at the same time, we've had pockets of election fraud, of corruption throughout this state on quote-unquote small-scale races, but you and I know there's no such thing as insignificant voter fraud. A school board member, a county commissioner, these folks have just as much an impact on our daily lives and our kids' futures as a member of the U.S. House does. And so it's my goal to take the good work that our state legislature, that our current and prior secretaries of state have done, and really enforce the law throughout the state in rural areas like where I grew up, not just in our urban areas, to ensure that the voices of living, legal U.S. citizens, residents of Alabama who have legally registered to vote are the only ones that are heard on Election Day. And that could not be more important, especially in light of the fact that during the Biden administration, we saw millions of illegal aliens come across our southern border. It's never been more important to maintain our voter rolls and also to combat absentee ballot harvesting. And to do that, what I want to do is to form an election integrity team within the Office of Secretary of State. Florida has a similar concept. They call it the Election Crimes Unit, but a group of specialized experts that are dedicated to election fraud, because a lot of times our election fraud gets reported to local law enforcement, and we have some of the finest law enforcement in this state. It's a privilege. I had to get to know a lot of them last year, but when they're dealing with murder, human trafficking, drugs, and they get a claim of election fraud, a lot of times they don't have the manpower, resources, or the bandwidth to deal with that. Mm-hmm. And so being able to refer it to the Office of Secretary of State to do that follow-up and investigation. And of course, Secretary of State doesn't have prosecutorial authority, but we can delve into the matter and then turn it back to local law enforcement or to the Attorney General to actually prosecute. Because our laws are only strong if they're actually enforced and if we actually apprehend some of these folks. I'm sure you probably saw in the past couple of weeks there were some women over in Russell County that were arrested for absentee ballot harvesting. And so again, I'm really grateful that our legislature has been focused on this, but now comes the task of enforcing it statewide in every corner of this state.
Caroleene, it's also a good thing that you're a lawyer. because even though the requirement for Secretary of State is not to be a lawyer, you have a law degree and practice law and everything. But that's interesting about the crime unit. Go into that more, because the biggest job in the Secretary of State is the job of administering the state elections. And you perceive that. That's what I think the average person would think. So this concept that Florida is doing now, did they have some history of corruption and well, of course, that contested presidential race showed their stuff was so archaic down there. But what do they do that you think is you're incompetent? Their thoughts on that, or what?
Yes.
Go with that crime thing more. That's something that's never been done before, isn't it?
Not in the state of Alabama. And so in Florida, and you're right, in 2000, Bush v. Gore, Kathleen Harris was the Secretary of State, and a very strong conservative Secretary of State who wouldn't back down. And so as an 8th grader, I remember watching her, and then not too long after that, Beth Chapman was, I believe, our first female Secretary of State, another huge role model of mine. So, but I think that's when the nation really paid attention. Oh, we really need to have good people in the Secretary of State's office. It's not some administrative role. It can make the difference in the future of our country and therefore the future of the world, truly. And so with respect to this crimes unit, again, I think Florida has certainly created a model that we can emulate, but they have election law experts, IT experts, folks that are dedicated to following up on these claims of fraud wherever they are, if they're in Birmingham or if they're in Wilcox County, but following up on these claims and then enabling our law enforcement to know whether a claim is valid and helping them investigate that, or whether there's nothing behind the claim. But again, helping alleviate the burden on our law enforcement and making it easier for our law enforcement, district attorneys, attorney general to actually prosecute that. But with respect to my legal background also, I think that it's going to be increasingly important as we see liberal activist out-of-state groups coming to Alabama trying to ballot harvest, manipulate our voter registration rules. And if you think that, if your viewers think that doesn't happen, there were George Soros funded groups in Covington County and Mobile County just last year.
Oh, were there?
Yes. And the Office of Secretary of State is one of the most frequently sued offices in the state of Alabama.
It is, yeah.
So I want to leverage my legal background again, as I think, unfortunately, we're going to see increasing challenges from again, far left activist groups that are out of state.
Caroleene, you've got you're such a beautiful young lady, but you got a beautiful family. Your husband, Bobby's such a nice guy. Tell us about your little girls now. They're already 6 and 4.
Almost 6 and almost 3. So they're a lot of fun. Our oldest is Philippa. My dad is Philip. So she's named after him. It means lover of horses, which is very appropriate for both of them.
Because you grew up riding horses over there.
Yes, sir.
That's the older one's name. Is after your daddy.
Yes, her grandfather, and then my younger daughter is Lydia. Named
after your aunt.
My aunt, and she was named after her grandmother, my great grandmother, who was she was a widowed lady, but she farmed in Coleman County. And actually, in 1922, and there's an old newspaper article. She was one of the founding members of the Coleman County Farm Bureau.
The original Miss Lydia.
Yes.
That was your mama
and Lydia's grandmother.
Grandmother?
Yes, my great-grandmother.
What was her last name?
Lydia Brinley Lovelady. So her grandfather was Mace Thomas Payne Brinley, who settled the Brinley Mountain area.
Okay, yeah.
So my mom's family has been in Coleman County before it was Coleman County, back when it was Blount County.
That's amazing. I bet that's great for running statewide, because this last 2 years you've really got to know people well in this area of the state, the Montgomery, the Mobile area, and but you've got some inherent advantages because you've got those roots in North Alabama.
Well, I'm
Coleman's in Porter County.
It is, and growing up too, my mom was always very cognizant of making sure that my sister and I spent time up in Coleman County.
So you spent a little girl, you go up there.
Oh yes, sir. So and we go to the Coleman County Fair, and just the German work ethic, I think that's inherent in Coleman. My mom was always proud that in addition to running up, she's a physical therapist. She ran her own business, and she'd always always mow her own grass.
This is your mama.
Yes, yes. She said, I mow my own grass because that Coleman County
what was
work
your
ethic.
daddy's name is Hardy.
That's right.
But now, what was your mother's? What was their name?
Her maiden name was Lovelady.
That's right. Okay. And the great grandmama was named. She was Lovelady also.
Lovelady was her married name.
Okay.
Brindley was her maiden name.
Yeah, so that Lydia name came down through the generations.
That's right. That's right.
Your mother's name is what? I forget.
Lynn.
Lynn and Lydia.
Yes.
People don't know this, but your family goes far back. Your daddy, who is a cattle farmer from Monroe County, and then he's also a well-renowned orthodontist who practiced in Monroeville and Andalusia. But that helped you in the congressional campaign when you got down to Andalusia, didn't it? Well, that wasn't in your district, though.
It wasn't, but I had a lot of people praying for me there, so I was very grateful for that. But that's another, again, growing up in rural Alabama, I feel like you're on the road a lot, you're connected to people, you keep in touch with folks, and so that's why I'm grateful to be running a statewide campaign, because you're not honed in by arbitrary district lines. You get to campaign statewide and make those connections.
I'm glad you're running statewide. You know, when I'll say this as an old man, when you're my age and you're sitting around looking at your life and thinking about things, this race statewide, I think you're going to win this race, but whether win, lose, or draw, you will look back at this experience. I know it's taxing for you and Bobby to get out and go all over 67 counties and take those little girls all over the place with you. But that's really what you're giving up to do this is respecting. But you'll look at statewide. I bet that last experience running down here for Congress, think how many people you met who think of you like part of their family.
Undoubtedly.
And you'll have that connection all over the state
so
now.
Enriched, yes. And in running, again, in a strip of the state, it was a wonderful experience, but a lot of times you only see one piece of the puzzle. You're campaigning in part of Mobile County, but not Baldwin County. Well, there's so many issues impacting the Bay. Or campaigning in Crenshaw County, but not Covington or Coffee County. Issues impacting the wiregrass. You kind of see through a glass darkly, I guess. So I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to again get to campaign statewide. And as far as my husband and daughters, we have been so blessed by all the friendships. We do, and I think because we are a state that we really do share common values, and first and foremost being faith in God. So many things are family friendly on the campaign trail, be it church services or festivals or parades or even cattlemen's meetings, farmers' fed. I mean, there are certain things you don't want to bring your 3-year-old to, business meetings and such. But there are more events than you would think that you can incorporate your family, and that's very important because my kids are the reason why I'm running. The other big aspect of the office of Secretary of State is being head of the business services in this state.
Now that's important. I'm glad you brought that up because people didn't know that.
Yes, and that is I think if you talk to current or prior secretaries of state, they'll say, election integrity, especially when elections roll around, is first and foremost in front of mind. But on a given day, 70% of what you're doing in the office is administering and taking care of the corporate services aspect of the job. And that's so important for this state. I want to ensure that the business environment here continues to grow and flourish, especially for small business owners and especially for those small business owners in rural communities like where I grew up. It's my goal to ensure that my kids and the next generation have opportunities here in Alabama. Brain drain is such a problem in this state, especially in South Alabama, and so I want to use this role to reduce business fees, streamline services, help make Alabama the #1 destination for businesses looking to incorporate, not just locate in Alabama, but actually incorporate here so that the next generation has those great jobs and has the opportunities and wouldn't think anywhere other than starting their lives here in Alabama, because I want to ensure that my girls get to continue to live in this wonderful state.
You brought up, I'm glad you did, elections are what people think about. It's the most important thing probably, but people don't realize all the business licenses are issued through your office, and a lot of other things are issued through there, aren't they? Like What besides the business license and corporation, everybody
Yes,
does
UCC
a corporation?
filings, they're actually, because this office of Secretary of State, has been around since before Alabama was actually a state. So if you look at our Constitution and then statutes over the year, there are actually over 1,000 different discrete duties and responsibilities of the office of Secretary of State. So it's incredibly important to our daily lives, in addition to, of course, election integrity. And so that's why, again, I think my particular background of again, being a candidate in a contested race, but also being a corporate attorney, being the daughter of 2 small business owners, growing up in rural Alabama, where most of the businesses in a town are small businesses, is really important to continuing to create this environment where small businesses can grow and flourish, and the economy of our state can only get better.
Well, the thing I'll tell you about that, I've done a lot of Secretary of States, you bring that up. And I remember one named Jim Bennett, who was in the legislature with me, who was in the Senate and House and from Jefferson County. He served at least 2 terms as Secretary of State. And I would go by and visit him sometimes. He wasn't as laid back as you are. I mean, he wasn't as, I don't want to say confident. He just seemed frustrated. I said, Jim, you okay? He said, running this office is just a nightmare. He had never really run anything. People don't realize that's a working office. He had 75 employees. He said, I've got to oversee 75. People don't realize how big that. I would rate, Caroleene, the Secretary of State's office as being maybe the 3rd most important office in the constitutional way. Governor, obviously. I'd say Agriculture Commissioner is pretty high. In most states, they think, like ours, they think of Agriculture Commissioner. But after that, I can't think of a job, at least employee-wise. You're going to have 75 employees over there. The treasurer, Young Boots, hasn't got about 10 employees, and the auditor ain't got but 5 or 10. I mean, so you've got a whole, that's a working office. People who come to me and say, I want to run for Secretary of State. I say, well, you better find something a little easy if all you want to do is run for office, because that's a working job.
No,
that's not a job you just run for. Like, run for lieutenant governor if you won't do anything, or public service commission. They don't really do anything. But Secretary of State is a hard job.
It is, and actually, I think due to increasing technology, I think currently West Allen employs about 38 employees.
Oh, is that so? They have reduced amount.
So there
then
has
they
reduced.
75.
Well, and I think increasing technology
right,
has helped with that, and but also I think a lot of people don't realize that the Office of Secretary of State, the funding is generated by the business filing fees, and
so it pays for itself.
It pays for itself. Does not take money from the general fund budget, and so it's very important to me that, again, we continue to be good stewards of those funds, and also work to reduce fees. I think a lot of individuals are surprised, especially small business owners, when they want to change their registered agent, that it can cost them over $100 to do that, and I don't think it should. And so I want to reduce fees, and again continue to be fiscally responsible on that front. But also, to your point, that's a lot of employees, but at the same time, when we talk about election integrity, I think a lot of Alabamians don't realize that, on election day, it's up to us as private citizens to ensure that election integrity. We need qualified poll workers. A lot of poll workers, I don't know at your precinct where you vote, but I would dare say that a lot of them, most of them are retirees, and we're so grateful for their service, but we need to be incentivizing the next generation of poll workers to step up and learn from these veteran poll workers that we have a lot of knowledge to share. But as we see younger generations with more flexible work schedules, we're going to need poll workers, especially over the next couple of decades, to step up and get qualified. And so that's another goal of mine, is to make people more aware, make law firms more aware of pro bono opportunities for lawyers to participate on election day, because it's not as if there's an army of election integrity workers that miraculously show up on the first Tuesday of November. It's on us to step up and take those roles. I was visiting recently with the probate judge of Tuscaloosa County. This past November, they needed over 500.
Who's probate judge right now?
Judge Robertson.
Because that boy was probate judge so long up there, I forget his name, Gwaltney McCollum or somebody.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Who is it?
Rob Robertson.
Oh, yeah, I know Rob.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. He's a veteran. He's a wonderful, wonderful person. But he was saying, this past November they needed over 500 poll workers for Tuscaloosa County.
Good gosh.
So you can
now
imagine.
probate judges respond for getting the poll workers.
That's right.
That's
That's right. So imagine statewide how many poll
500,
workers.
he had to get 500 people.
That's right. That's right.
And all of them are old like me, and they're passing away. Let's look at the roll. Let's see. Those 30 are gone this year. So, is that what? Well, you got to have 500 of them.
And Tuscaloosa, so you can imagine that's not even the most populous county in the state. We
I can
really
see right now saying, those 30 are gone, and these 3, I don't think they know where they are, so we're going to knock them off too. So it's like y'all have that, but the probate judges do the poll workers then.
Yes, but
all you do is tell them how many you got to have.
Yeah, but I think again we need more people to be engaged in the process and to realize that, and that's why I'm so grateful for having grown up in a small town, because you don't just show up for things, that you've got to participate and you've got to make things happen if you want to see them happen. And so again, trying to get our younger generations to recognize that. To go out and register to vote and be an educated and informed voter, but also to think about volunteering on Election Day.
I love that you know so much about the job you're running for, and that you'll do a good job in it. But I want to go back to the politics of it. I can tell anybody who's ever run statewide that it becomes almost like a vacation if you really like people and like politics. And I've said this over the years. I said, I wish I had run for statewide office once just to get out and visit the whole state really well. Now, I've done that through my column for 20 years or so. But and when I first started writing this column, I would get out and visit it. But it's not I visit all the counties because my paper was in almost every county. But to do it like you're doing it, and you're doing it the way it should be done by really getting out and seeing people, because I see you at the events and everything. But you meet so many people, and I keep using this in my column. The longer you live and the more you see, and you haven't run statewide, knocks off about 20 years experience for meeting people. But just take your family, for example. There you've got those roots with the Brindley up there in Blount and Coleman County, Brindley Mountain. And then your Aunt Lydia has been a stalwart leader of Alpha and Coleman for years. But you meet people. Going back to, you ever read Catherine Tucker Wyndham when you were growing up?
Oh, yes, absolutely. No.
She had a saying that I used on him. Alabama's a big front porch.
That's so true.
You'll be over. I bet you've seen this already. You got to know somebody campaigning in Mobile, and they'll say, "My sister met you when you were campaigning. I knew you from Mobile," and you'll get their vote because they'll say they may live in Russell County,
right,
or something, or live in Russellville in Franklin County. But you'll find all the state is just a big front porch.
No, it is.
Now, Huntsville's changed a lot. I mean, it's a cosmopolitan place, but when you get outside of Huntsville, even Montgomery.
Oh, absolutely. No.
Going back to your daddy, people don't realize your daddy and Kay Ivey were at Auburn together.
That's
in
right.
campus
that's
politics.
Right.
Remember, I visited with him after George McMillan's funeral. That was such an interesting dynamic. I didn't know it when I was visiting your daddy about, at that time, they all were in school together at Auburn. George McMillan was president of the SGA. Your daddy was vice president, or Kay Ivey was vice president.
My father was president the year after George.
Okay, so he was getting ready to be
younger.
president. So Philip Hardy was president of the SGA after. But all of them were in just a cadre. It was Kay Ivey, George McMillan, your daddy, Dr. Hardy, and Jimmy Rain.
And Lester Killebrew.
That's right, Lester.
Yes.
Jimmy Rain sent me a picture of the team together. Lester hadn't changed a bit. He looks the same thing. Lester, I didn't know, and I wrote a column about it and said Lester was one of the biggest, and Lester's pretty modest guy. He says, I am the biggest, trying to be in the state. But they all looked, I mean, think how well they've all done.
No, and it was a time too of a lot of turmoil too. 1960s.
Oh gosh, you had to live through it to
67.
realize it.
So,
I was talking about lunch today about it. I was having lunch over at Chappie's with somebody, and they were my era. And I said, if you lived through the 1960s, which we did, and we saw that stuff happening every day. I saw George Wallace stand in the schoolhouse door. I saw the marchers come. I knew Wallace from being a page. And I my first term in the legislature, I was Wallace's representative. I had that part of Barber County.
Oh.
Barber was in your congressional district, wasn't it?
It was.
So you got to know so many people one-on-one. I bet that's parlayed all over the state, hasn't it?
Well, no, and to your point, you know, I was in Russell County trying to meet up with the Russell County engineer, and because of weather, we weren't able to. It was one evening. Well, you know, between the night and then the following morning, I'd made it all the way over to Washington County because that was also in the district, and I was sitting in Jake's restaurant, which is one of two restaurants, or about two restaurants in Chatham. Great place, and
in Washington County.
Yes, and met his mama.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
So you could, you know, literally state line to state line. So it's truly a wonderful experience because we have such incredible people in this state, and people that care, and people that are every day trying to make their communities better. It's really inspiring, and more than anything, just incredibly humbling.
Well, I bet you're going to find even more and more as you progress over the next 6 months or so, campaign all over the state like you're doing now. You'll find that it just continues to cavalcade. You know, you'll see, well, I'm voting for you because your Aunt Lydia, you know, she helped my son get in Auburn. I mean, you'll find things like that will happen. Or somebody met you, like Victor Gasson will call me. Victor and I, we're both big fans of yours. He'll call me and say, I'll say, what's going on in Mobile, Victor? And he'll say, I love that Caroleene Dobson. And you take time to go see old people like Victor.
Oh my goodness! I hope that's the next.
Victor's 10 years older than me.
I hope that's the next biography that you work on, because he's got so much wisdom to share. And so I enjoyed your book on Senator Wagner. So I will put in a plug for that to be on your docket.
Victor's helping you too, isn't he?
Oh yes. He's been.
You take a lot of time with old Victor. Victor and I came to the legislature in '82 together.
Wow.
And even though if you, like Jabbo and I were really Republicans, we just ran as Democrats. Everybody had to back then, but Victor ran as a Republican.
Right.
He was able. It wasn't about 5 real Republicans,
right.
And they came from silk stocking districts, like wherever he lived in Mobile, and Mountain Brook would have one, but the rest of Jabbo couldn't even run as a Republican in Vestavia. You know, everybody had to run as a Democrat. That caught up with him eventually. Jabbo's for you.
Well,
we talked about it the other night. Maryland. They're great people. They are.
No, and again, I think you've given he's given a gift to the state, and you've helped memorialize that in your recent book of him. So I'm grateful to be able to read and learn from it.
Well, Caroleene, you're perfect for the Secretary of State's job, and I'm glad you're running for it. And we thank you for being with us. Our time's up. Folks, our guest tonight has been Caroleene Dobson, who is the leading candidate for Secretary of State in the Republican primary. She's been able to be a Republican all of her life, so she's not let Johnny come late to the Republican Party or the Republican philosophy. She's a wonderful mother and a great Alabamian and a great candidate for Secretary of State, and she'll be on the ballot in May next year, which is right around the corner. Caroleene Dobson for Secretary of State. Thank you, Caroleene.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, viewers, for watching.
This has been Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, a production of Troy University Television. Opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of Troy University, its administration, faculty, staff, or students.